I would like this to be as interactive as possible. With any questions, please do come in and let me know. Anything that you disagree with, please tell me. Anything that you do that you think is slightly better than I do, please do tell me, because I'd like to learn too. Anybody who's seen something or had something done on their hair in salon, please let me know. You guys who've been in salons before or work in salons now and you see them doing it differently or a different technique, please do share. Okay, so why do we think of foil placement? What is foil placement? What can it do for us? And why is it important? Hopefully we're going to cover all of those today. I've forgotten them already, so I'll just start talking. So I'm going to show you a few techniques on this lady here and talk to you about what you need to ensure you do and what you need to stay away from, okay? So who's had hair foil work done in the past that they were completely cross with, or they thought, what are you doing?
Me.
Emily, right, go on. Why?
Oh my God, just like, it was in Australia actually, and I think it was like 30 quid, so yeah. I asked for it really. But it was just, she was doing it so, you know how you have the line at the top where the highlights are?
Yeah.
And there's no like root smudge or anything.
Yeah.
And she just left it like that, and I had so many lines, and it was like, there was no directional foils, and it was all just from the bottom to the top of my head, yeah. And it was gross.
Yeah, yeah.
And she didn't tone it or anything, and I was like, right, that was a waste of money.
Yeah. People foil hair weird, and to be honest, it doesn't matter how you put the foils in, as long as you've got a process behind the foil work and it makes a little bit of sense for the roundness of the head. Some people just throw foils knocking about all over the place, which I've seen. What is going on there? And it gets to a point where you start to feel weighed down by a foil work, because the way we did it a couple of weeks ago and the way that we teach primarily on level 2 is work in columns and just work up the head. So you work in your boxes and you just work around. The reason we start off with that is primarily because it's easy to get the section and patterns. So you do a box, 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 all the way around. And then if you want to go from a T-section to a half, you make your boxes bigger, and then a full head, you make a bigger box, or you extend your boxes down. Simple. Okay. However, there's no dimension to the hair. There's no real flow to the foil work. And when she puts her hair up, it looks terrible because it's all dotty and liney in the front. When she puts her hair up at the back, it's all streaky and bitty at the back. It just doesn't work so well. And it's not the prettiest way of foiling. Also, it's long. And I know you guys have been focusing on it over the last few weeks. Some of the photos I've seen, every photo I've seen has been great. You've done very, very well with your foil work. I am incredibly impressed. However, I have had people saying, I've had to stop it today. I'm going to finish it tomorrow because I'm so annoyed with it. And I get it. I mean, that is exactly how I was when I started. Because it's long, isn't it? You do one box, you think, oh my God, I've got the whole head to do. Now, we're going to focus on different areas and different things. Now, firstly, we're going to look at how I foil and the technique that I basically use for foiling hair. And what we've got to look for is actually what the head is like and what the hair is doing. Okay, so you have to, it's very important when you're working in a salon or you're doing your hair at home, for instance, you've got to think of the end goal. Okay, so you've got to think of actually what the hair is going to look like when the person leaves the salon. So that is including cut and color. Okay, so obviously thinking of color because we're doing foil placement. But talk about the haircut. What's the haircut actually going to be doing for us? So if it's a long layered look and she's got hair below her shoulders and it's quite flicky and bouncy and sexy, you want something to be flowy and sexy and running with the shape of the head. Okay. However, the shorter you come, you have to change your foil application because you have to be aware of certain areas. Okay, so I've got here, it's messy, I haven't blow dried it, but this is a soft graduated bob looking shape. Tomorrow, we're going to do a graduated bob. because I may as well demo it while I've got the block, and then we've got a video for it. So when we go back and we do it again, you might not get it when we're back, and then you can get home and look at it. I'll tell you about that later. But our graduated bob section here, we need to be very, very careful of when we're foiling the hair for certain reasons. Can anyone tell me why? Anyone? We haven't ever gone through this, obviously, but can anybody tell me why it could be an issue that we've got graduation in here, and if we foil the whole head? Anyone got any ideas at all?
Is it because of the way the foils will look because it's graduated at the back?
As in when you take the foils out and there's the colour?
Yeah, when it's like when your hair's down and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what you'll find is that my highest level of graduation, or my highest level of hair, is in here. So everything from here up comes down and hits that point. Okay, it's probably a bit higher than that. But underneath it, the hair is getting longer and is getting shorter and shorter as it comes into the overall outline. Okay, so what you need to be very, very careful of is that if you come through here with foils and you foil in here and all the way down, all of this here is all going to look dotty and like cheetah spots almost. So when we used to do cutting and colouring salon, we'd have a consultation with our guest with the colourist there, because you can see that the way that graduation flicks up and sits up into the shape, and you think you've got all your foils in between natural coming all the way up here, it's going to have little dots and little lines running up the whole back piece. So you'll find from here up and forwards, probably down into around about here, is all going to look great. And then under here is all going to be dotty and cheetah spotty. Okay, so thinking of where you're going to be going with your foils and thinking of where you're going to be going with your haircut is very, very important. Obviously, then the shorter we go, the more careful we've got to be. So if we come and do like a little short graduation on this person, which we're going to go on to in a few weeks' time, I'm not going to go any further with the cut and the graduated bob, your short grad basically lifts all of this hair up to here. So it's a little bit more softer and a little bit more tucked. Okay, so it's a similar situation. So if you came through with your foil work all the way into the sides, you're going to get all the dottiness coming up here and all the way around into the shape. So it is ugly. And I'll send you a few photos of some of the things that people have done who have not been aware of that situation. And then you get your foils on top, for instance, and then they just dress across it, and you get this really nice foil work with a long piece in the front, but then all this dottiness underneath. So that doesn't work. Also, if you've got a hair with a base like my guest's hair at the moment, okay, and you think, what do we do when she's got a short graduation? We want to lighten this piece of hair here, but we don't want to leave the hair looking too different. So what's going to happen is this is all nice and short. We know that this is going to create dottiness and create the cheetah spotty feel all the way in the sides and into the back if we foil there. So we're going to leave that out, obviously. But then say, for instance, we do lightener in here with our foils, and then that dresses down and she's got like a little, I don't know, a cool little fringe area and something that just comes back and connects. This is all going to be really nice and highlighted, but then there's no color on here. So how do we go from foiling this and not making it too different to this side? Okay. So that's more of a case of thinking of your color choice. So are we using quasis? Are we using a strong developer on our lightener? Do we want to lighten that 6 or 5 or 6 shades when really we can lighten it 1 or 2 shades just to give it that sheen and that glimmer? Okay. So there's all little things that you need to think of. When it's longer hair, it's not such an issue. However, the issue comes with long hair is when the person's tying their hair up. Okay, so we know full well that when you're in a bob, chances are she's not going to tie that up too much because it's not really going to hold too well in a bun. So your foil work around the base here, if you were doing a bob with no shaping in it at all, you could work that vertically if you wanted to. You would get away with that. Okay, but if it's a person, you've then got to think about actual hair density, a person with long hair, sorry, you've got to think of the density of hair, the thickness of hair, just how much foil you're actually looking to put in the person, and your timings. So timings are absolutely crucial. Okay, you don't want to be spending 4 hours doing a full head of highlights. As we worked out a couple of weeks ago, the pricing of a bog standard tint to a color correction is the same as a color correction is the same as a full head of highlights. Full head of highlights takes me probably about 2 hours, if I'm honest, to get them in. On medium density hair, I go quite slow because I like to be sure that everything's going to be perfect. However, in that 2 hours, I could have done 5 or 6 tints. So you've got to think that your tints are always going to be your money makers. But what I do, first of all, the first technique I want to show you through, or sectioning pattern that I'd like to show you through, is what I call the double herringbone, or it's the double herringbone, a little diamond, and then everything is working with directional foils. Okay. God, I'm stuttering. What we mean by directional foils, sorry about that. What we mean by directional foils is we're directing the foils and directing the color into the person's hair, however we want to see it. Okay, so rather than working vertically, which is very one-dimensional, we're working with the roundness of the head. So remembering that the head is round. Yeah, okay. So your foil application is always going to be the same. You're still going to be doing what you've focused on the last couple of weeks. So you're still going to be working with your weaves and your slices and your baby lights in certain areas, wherever you want to go with your technique. But your sectioning pattern can make a huge difference to you in relation to keeping your speed up, and also in relation to your cleanliness of your application. Okay, so I always start with a diamond around the crown. Okay, and I'm going to lower it down so I can control it. I always start with a diamond over the crown, because your crown area is for me, is one of the most difficult areas to foil, because you're working with something that's always going to have a bit of jump. It's always going to have a little bit of instability, and it's always going to have the main area of the hair where she creates her volume. So if you get bleeds around the hairline or in the crown area, then she's going to see it. And I know I shouldn't say that, because a bleed anywhere is terrible, but a bleed in the crown or around the front hairline is going to be your worst nightmare. Okay, so I'm going to pin some clips in there to keep that. Hopefully that stays, and you'll see I have my first diamond section in. Okay, so that quarters off the roundness. Everything else around the head is pretty much a flat surface, isn't it? Other than when you come round here behind the ear where your head actually rounds in, you've got your flat side on the side, you've got your flatness on the back, you've got your flatness on this side, and your 2 herringbone sections, which are reasonably flatter. You do work around, obviously, the roundness of the head because our heads are overly shaped, but that's quite a round point of the head, isn't it? Let's be fair. So I section that off first of all. Okay, then I work my 2 herringbones. So these are your herring bones. That's what the bones are called. Okay, but I work those forward. So where you'll see some people come from base vertically all the way up to the top, or whether they work from the front and forward, there's a fundamental difference of what that will do. Can anybody tell me what the difference is? If you work straight up from the base all the way to the parting, what could an issue be with your foil work? What could you find could be a bit of a difficulty with styling the hair through?
Isn't it when you tie the hair up, it'll look streaky?
Yeah, it will, absolutely. But I'm looking for something else.
Also, Rob, when you work, well, what I found when I was working from the bottom up in that section, when I was doing my file work, is that they become big and cumbersome and bleed a lot.
Okay, yeah. Absolutely. So when you're working from base up, you can find you get a little bit more of a bleed coming through. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. It's, I mean, you could find that anywhere in the head, to be fair. To be honest, if your foil work is clean enough, then you will find that you can go from anywhere. But if you're finding that you find a bit of a difficulty with it, then yeah, definitely. That's also quite a nice idea. The one thing I'm looking for is primarily to do with the way the guest can move her hair around once she's left the salon. So you want the idea of working from the base or from the outline hairline and up to the parting. The chances are, because it's all very horizontal all the way up the head, she's not really going to be able to move her hair around on top, because as Emily says, it's going to look quite streaky, and you're going to be unveiling those streaks quite early on, aren't you? So if we think that everything's coming up vertically all the way, and she's got a center parting for when she's there, but she decides to move the parting over, it's going to be very streaky. It's going to be very liney, because you've come through with your big weaves coming in. Maybe you'll do a baby light or two around the front, but you're going to expose those weaves. Yeah, does that make sense? So if I twist this here, and say for instance, she's had it highlighted all the way up to the parting, but then she decides to wear a low parting in here, that flips over. Okay.
Wouldn't that sorry, Rob. Wouldn't that depend on the type of highlight you've done as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you did a full head of, if you did slices, it's going to look very liney. But if you did baby lights, you'll get away with it. Yeah.
Thanks for that, because I was just gonna say, Rob, not be rude. You know, like, I know we haven't done it yet, but you know, balayage.
Yep.
You know, when they do the one where you like move the hair around to get the different lines. That's why I was. That's why.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's all on application as well. You're absolutely right. But if you've got massive, great weaves in here, and she decides to wear her hair there, she's just going to see that all foiled. Yeah. So it's a very difficult way to foil. I think it's a very strange way to work. So I work primarily with directional sectioning. So I'll come from a point on my recession and sit. Oh goodness me, my comb has just landed in my product.
Rob,
Yes.
talking about that, I've seen, so when I was working in a salon,
Yeah.
one of the clients that came in had a habit of constantly flipping her hair over and
Yeah.
etc., like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And instead of doing a straight line, one of the hairdressers did the zigzag instead.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Good. How did she find it?
Yeah, no, it looks really good.
Yeah. Perfect.
It was really blended well.
Yeah. That's one of the. That was one of my ones for later. So you've nicked up. It's a great technique, and as you're saying about balayage, Eurolette brought up balayage as well. I use a zigzag in balayage because it's easy and it gives you your pieces for you. So your zigzag sections, the only reason I don't use them for foil work is they take a long time getting your zigzag in. It can take a little bit of time doing your sections. I'm primarily one for putting your sections in first and then getting going, because it alleviates my weird mind where I don't like messiness in my hair. So I put my sections in, bang, straight with a diamond, put my herringbones, and then your other sections just flow so quickly. If you're working zigzags and you've got some time, it can work very well, and we'll show you that later on. So nice one, Emmy.
Is this what you always do for foils then?
This
This is what you do? Yeah.
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
If I'm doing foils, I will do my diamond, I'll do my herringbone, and then I'll see what happens on the bottom, generally. Depending on if I'm doing a full head, half head, T-section, stuff like that. So if I take her off the stand, I can't take her off the stand. Oh, there we go.
Where do you take the top of the diamond from? The end of the parting at the back?
Pardon?
Where do you take the tip of the diamond from? Can you put the head up? Yeah, okay.
So wherever you want to go. I do a big section or quite a large section, because the crown can go anywhere from there all the way down to here. So as a generality on a block, I take a wide section. You want to cover your crown. Also, I go quite wide because the width of the block, I like it on the roundness of the head. You can lift it higher, but then your foiling from the bottom comes across the roundness of the head. Okay, so it makes it slightly trickier on your body when you're moving. The reason on a block I go a little bit wide or a little bit thicker with mine is because you don't know where the crown is. But if the crown was bang central, I'd slim my box down a little bit. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So there's my two herringbones in there and in there. Okay, and then primarily all we want to do is just work around the head. So again, I'm going to come from the point of the ear or the top of the ear and come up into my diamond. And always thinking here, you've got to think about the actual width of your foil. So if you do a massive great section, your foil may be too small to get in there. Yeah. So then you're going to be in trouble because you're going to have to split this section down and do 2 foils up each piece. It's going to be a nightmare. But I know full well that when I'm working, it's a weird thing that I have, or a weird thing that I do, that I find it very difficult foiling hair that's all in a massive section. But if I've got small sections running around and I think, right, I could get through this box here in a couple of minutes with foil work. And then I know that's a couple of minutes, that's a couple of minutes, that one is, and that one is. Yeah. So for a half head perspective, I would then just come through and pop a few foils in here. So that, yes.
For that side section,
Yeah.
so I think I did the old section in that you told us last time for my sister's hair.
Yeah.
I think that section from the side, that sort of went to the tip. So you know where it meets the diamond at the top?
Yeah.
My section, it was really like triangular at the top. Is that an issue? Because I
No.
was doing really small weaves.
No, not at all.
No?
Not at all.
Okay.
You want it to go, I'll explain what I mean by my, but when I start the application in a second. You want it to go into a small point, as smaller point as you can possibly get it within reason. I mean, you don't want it like running out of hair specifically, but the more of a point you can get to, or the narrower you can go, it works better with the roundness of the head because you're thinking of the head shape. Okay, so I'm gonna put 2 more in here just so that you can see, and then I'll explain what I'm talking about there. So we want to ensure that when we're coming up the head, we're narrowing down each one of our sections, okay? Because it's just going to give you that connectivity to the next point. If you don't narrow them down and they are just big squares at the top, or bigger squares at the top as they are at the bottom, that's not wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong. This is just a technique that I work with, that I like to slim myself in a little bit as we come up the head, because I find it just connects better and connects a little bit more easily with my shape. Okay, so for a half head, I work that. And then for a full head, I would just do the same as I'm doing around the sides and the back. So I'd slim that down into 3, but I'm not going to put that in because it's going to take ages. So last section in, it's not going to hold, is it? That holds. So a full head, I would remove these 2 and just do 3 columns working down, as I've just brought one out. Great. So with your application, this now gives you your remit to basically work where you want to work. So I always start on the underneath sections and then work my way up to the top. Why is that? Why would I not start in my diamond or in my herringbones? Can anyone remember?
Because the hair is finer.
No.
Development time.
Don't think so hard. Huh?
Oh, to wash it out.
Yeah, to wash it out. So if I start up here and I start thinking there's more hair than I expected, or start in my box in the diamond, my pieces here won't be developed by the time this is, and I've got to somehow rinse that out. Okay, so always start somewhere around about here or in your side pieces. Yeah.
Sorry, I keep asking questions.
No, go on.
This foil placement just for a graduated bob?
No. I use this for a graduated bob. This is perfect because you won't go any lower into your graduation. So all my graduations in here, and we're foiling a half head of highlights for any person. So if she had long hair and you wanted to do a half head, this would work perfectly. If this was just a normal bob or some long hair and she wanted a full head, I'd do exactly the same sections in the top 4 and the diamond. These 2 here just change to vertical sections. So I'd have another section coming in here, another section down here, another section here, and if I need one, another one in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So as Emily was saying earlier, they go from thicker to thinner. Okay. Each one goes from thicker into slightly thinner into the base towards my diamond, okay? And the reason for that, for me, is it all connects a lot better into this diamond shape. So as Amy was saying earlier, she had a client who likes to fling her hair around and move her hair around all over the place. I don't want my shape to be rigid boxes, so that when I come finer into here, into my crown, depending on where she flips her crown around, we're gonna get that difference in dimension for the way the hair falls, okay? Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. And then all we do is start our application. So I'm gonna do an application because, yeah, I'm gonna do one on one side. I don't want to focus too heavily on it because you guys have done it before. But then I'm going to take them down and do a zigzaggy pattern and then show you a different way to do a full head in the back of somebody's head, okay? Which also works incredibly well and is a lot more time saving. So I've just dropped a section, so I'll be 1 second.
Rob, this might have been asked before, but I've completely forgotten before.
Go on.
Does the way that you highlight differentiate if the person's already had a full head
Nice.
and you're just
touching it up?
Yeah.
No. So do you mean if they've been to somebody before and they've done it differently to how you do it? Is that what you mean?
No, well, yeah, and no, but yeah, sort of both, I suppose.
Okay, so
because, like, having highlights for years,
yeah,
you can sometimes get those, like, when, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you know, like, you get those spots of crossovers.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Crossovers in the hair, like dotty
no,
bits.
it's, yeah, dotty bits.
I've never seen it, to be honest. I don't know, to be honest. In relation to if somebody's coming in who has had highlights before and you do your foil technique differently, that's not a problem. You don't have to follow the same technique that somebody else has done. If somebody's come in who has loads of foil work and it's become, and basically the person hasn't, what I think you mean is the person hasn't lifted up all of the foil, so they've got with grown out bits and then they've replaced the foil and then, or replaced the highlight, but they've missed some of the regrowth. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Right. That's a big problem. That's more color correction. That would be a case of you have to always pick up your old weaves or the person's old weaves. Otherwise, you're just going to be putting hair or putting color over the top of hair that doesn't need to be colored. One thing that I did before, which was terrible when I was learning, is I picked up hair or picked up some weaves, and I also picked up some new hair in between. And the problem I found was that I only pasted color on the roots because I didn't want to overlap the rest of the color. So I found that I had highlights with brown ends, if that makes sense. So the ones that I picked out that I probably shouldn't have picked out, I didn't take all the way through. So you can doctor that in your foil. So I'll show you a technique for that in a minute, which is just basically like your balayage in between, so you're coloring in between. But you've got to be careful that you're picking up every single bit of foil that you need, or every single bit of highlight that you need to pick up. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know and tell me and ask me again, because we'll find a way to answer it, because I know what you're talking about, but the technique to correct it is a lot easier than we think. Okay, so our head sheet basically is going to come round, and then my ears are so low on this thing, so come in, and then that's the last one, so the ears need to come up higher, basically. Okay, so the way we work around the head is primarily, or the way I work around the head anyway, is finding your sections, finding your segments, and then coming through. Now we work with directional sectioning because, as we know, directional sectioning is the best way to work. We work with the rams of the head and we work diagonally up the head. You're going to be perfect every single time. So if we're starting, say, for instance, down here in the front section, we want our diagonal sections to come all the way forwards and our foils to work back into the guest's diamond shape, or the diamond shape that you've created. Okay. And then on our herringbones, we'll obviously come around the baseline first. So we'll come through this one here, work that vertically, and the same, where are we? The same into here. We can either work that vertically or you can come diagonally round. And then if we want to work our crown area, the crown can work, we can work this however we want to work that really. You can also come around the crown from the top, you can come at it from the side, or you can come around the shape. So you're creating a more of a rounder sort of line, okay? And then our herringbones, we start in the front again, and we just work those diagonally back all the way, and the same in this side into here, okay? So however you really want to work your foils is how you work your foils. Once you've got your sections in, it's a lot clearer of how we can work it. So if I twist her over, and we're going to start just here on this one side. So always tilt the head. All right, I know she's going to find it difficult sitting there with her head over. You don't want the head over massively, but yes.
Sorry. Is it not better to do like a panel in through instead of doing two sections for the front bit? I know that a lot of people do that, but I think from when I'm doing it, yeah. So I feel more confident doing a panel, like one big one down the front and working from the back to the front of the head, just so that I know it's consistent.
Yeah. So you mean, sorry, one sec. So you mean split that and have it one box?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. There's so many techniques. If you work a box down the center, for me, the reason I don't work like that is because normally then I work vertically the whole way up to that central box. That's a fast way to work, and most people do work that way because it still gives you that amount to be able to flick your part in. Personally, I just find this way is a little bit more natural. That's the only reason I do it. But yeah, if you want to do it that way, do it that way. Absolutely. As I said at the start, foil work or your foil work sectioning it's so personal to you. You can do it however you really want to do it, and you can find a way to work it. The only thing I would say is don't always work straight up to the parting, because it really does limit the way you can work your shape. Either do what Emily's saying, which is a nice way to do it, do your horizontal section or your vertical section from all the way to the back, all the way to the front. But always do your back, then your sides, then do your front area, because otherwise you're going to rinse that out before this. Or you can work a herringbone or work something rounded on the shape of the head. It's completely up to you. Okay, so if I just fire a few in here, it automatically gives me my diagonal shape. So I'm going to baby light the front. Okay, and then get my foil and start to work. How have you all found your foil application? Let's stand on my stand. How did you find the foil applications?
Rob, honestly, my foil application was rubbish. Because you see, like how you just slip that in there and you hold it.
Yeah.
I tried to keep the comb to get that firmness, but then I find as you put the application down the hair, it's going all over the place. Yeah,
I know what you mean. Take the comb out. It's important to take the comb out. Otherwise, the comb doesn't give you any tension. It's your hand and the pulling of the hair that gives you the tension. So if you leave your comb in there, and then you've got your tension here, but then you have to pull the comb out at some point, that loses all its tension. Yeah. So take the comb out first, or take the comb out once you've put the foil in. Okay. Your foil
the hard way.
Yeah, I know. These are very, very hard to do. Honestly, foil work is very difficult to get your eye in. But once you get it, it becomes quite easy. But I'm right in the way there, aren't I? You can't really see. But once you get it, it's so much easier than you think it's going to be, and less stressful. But it's just about getting your technique together and getting your technique down. So I always wipe across the top of my foil to get it clean, flip across, push down on the foil in the comb so that you've got your foil tension. Hold that up, come high. Instead of going straight in there, okay, because you might not get it as close, come high with your shape, hold up, and then pull the foil down. So pull the hair down across the foil. I don't know if you can see this really, but come high with it and then pull the hair down. So you're pulling the foil into the hair, okay? Then we've got our tension, okay? So if I twist, we've got our tension with our comb. So now if we do what you were saying, we paste that on. As soon as I take that away or take the comb out or let go of the hair, we've lost our tension, yeah? So comb in, that's all nice and tight. Comb comes out, push down, and then you've still got the tension. Everything's nice and tight in there. So I'm not going anywhere. Get your foil, or your color, sorry, apply, hold the, I've got to stand on my stand, hold the hair in place if you want to with the brush. Like put a bit of pressure down with the brush, let go, hold the foil in the two sides, and then just paste away. Okay, once that's pasted, you can pretty much let go of it and it will stay.
You make that look so easy.
I'll be honest, even I struggle sometimes. I mean, that went quite well, really. I'm quite happy.
Brilliant. I'm going to try that now. Thank you.
But honestly, it will take a while to really get it, okay, and to really focus on actually how you apply and how you feel comfortable applying. On a mannequin as well, it doesn't go so close because the hair on your scalp, it stretches, yeah? So everyone's scalp skin stretches. A mannequin's hard, solid plastic, so it doesn't pull. So if your foil drops a couple of millimeters, don't worry, okay? It's absolutely fine. Mine there, I mean, that looks pretty close, but it's not as close as I can get it on a person.
This one's nice.
Rob, do we have to buy our own foil when we come back, or do the
No.
salon?
We've got it.
You provide it, okay.
Everything we'll provide. So we've got foil, we've got lightener, we've got brushes, bowls, everything like that. We have color, we provide it all. So don't buy your own foil now.
Rob.
Yep.
I've got a question that's been bugging me.
Yeah, go on.
It's about peroxide.
Go on.
You know, you said you use a lower peroxide when lifting at the bottom.
Yep.
It's throwing me when you said that it only lifts 2 levels if you use 20.
Yeah. Okay.
It's throwing me.
Okay. So peroxide strengths are, as in the levels of lift, etc., things like that. It applies to permanent color. So when they talk about, it gives you 2 levels of lift for 6%, 3 levels of lift for 9%, and 4 levels of lift for 12%. It's talking about permanent color on natural virgin hair. Okay, so when we talk about lifting hair with lightener, it's the lightener that is doing the lifting, not the peroxide. So in a tint or a permanent tint, the peroxide is doing the lifting or the subduing or the deepening, etc. Okay, when it's a lightener, it's the lightener doing the lifting. So because it's only got one job, it lifts your hair, the developer is just going to be there to activate the product. Okay, so when you use a 3% or a 10 volt, you will have as many levels of lift within reason as a 40 volt or 12%, but it will take longer. So the peroxide rules only count on permanent colors and quasi colors, whereas 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of lift or covers gray or does something else, because the permanent color needs to be told what to do. Whereas the lightener's got one job, it lifts. So it will only lift your color. Make sense?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
In the group when I was doing mum's hair about the greys, it really, really confused me. I was like, oh my God, she's gonna have orange. It just popped through me.
Yeah, it's confusing, but just think of it as the peroxide is the activator for permanent colors. And it is the activator for bleach, really, for lightener, but lightener's only got one job. Your permanent colors can do a multitude of different things. It can lift and it can darken, it can tone, it can do cover gray. okay? But with your lightener, all you're doing with it is lifting hair. So your peroxide strengths just lift, or the peroxide will just activate that color a little bit faster or a little bit slower, okay?
Okay.
So there's a couple of foils in there. So all we do is just flow that shape up, okay? So if we go again with a little another one, all we work it is primarily up into the top of the person's head. Now, I would generally be I'm starting in the wrong section here, but I'm doing that because I've got a situation at the back that I want to show you a little bit later about how we foil the back section of a full head of highlights. So really, I would like to have been starting in my back 2 little triangles, because now I'm going to start to come along the side of my along the side of those boxes. So I would find it difficult then to apply my color in there. So
Rob, can I ask you a silly question?
yeah, no questions, silly, go
So,
for it.
you see, like how you're putting the foils in there. Let's say we're actually bleaching her. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do and she's virgin. We're gonna have to do the roots, the ends before we do the roots. Yeah.
No.
So would you
I see that. Yeah, I see what you're thinking there.
Okay, but would you bring the foil down a little bit, or would you leave the hair out? Sorry.
So, can anybody answer Eurolet's question? If this is virgin hair, and we need to, obviously we know with virgin hair, we do, or virgin tint applications, right? We do, without any help from foil or anything like that, we do the mid-lengths and ends first and leave the root because of the heat of the scalp, okay? Why does that not matter when we're foiling? Can anybody have...
It's just you're lifting it.
No. Because when you
Foils
do...
heat it up anyway.
Yeah, boy. So when you're working with bleach, and you're doing a scalp lightener, which we do in level 3, you still do the same process because you're leaving the hair out, exposed, and the scalp is hotter. But as Paige says, we're encasing the products in this, yeah, and this will insulate the heat. This will insulate the hair. So primarily, we don't need to do the root area after the mid-lengths and ends, which is lucky because that would be a nightmare. Because the lengths and ends, or the lengths and the ends in the foil are still being heated up and they're still getting hot, yeah, or they're nice and warm in there, nice and snug in there. And also we can use a climber zone, so a climber zone or a heater, something like that, to basically give us some heat that basically cooks the foil in, or that cooks the hair in the foil. Okay, so when we're using foils, this foil is a savior, because then we ain't got to do the lengths and ends and then come back and do the roots. Okay.
Thank you so much, Rob. Makes sense.
Makes sense. Good. Well done, Paige. That's nice. And Emily, as well, with what you were saying there, with you're using your lightener, it's still you've got to be careful, but your lightener will slightly lift. So what you're saying there also focuses with oxidization. We still need to get the oxygen into there. So you're right in a sense. So as we're working up the head, we're just primarily doing our same foiling technique that we're doing and work our shape in. Okay, so fold over, come high, push the foil down in with the color. So I come up here, pull the hair down. Instead of just putting it in at the root and then pulling down, you can get it a lot closer. So pull up and then push your foil in the mid lengths, pull the hair down over the foil, and that really gets it in nice and tight. Okay, and then on a person, it gets it proper nice. On a block, because you can't pull the scalp skin, it's a little bit looser. It's always going to be a little bit looser. You'll find when you come back in, your sectioning on people is so much easier, and your application on people is so much easier as well. Okay. Now, if we get a situation where you've got somebody else's color, okay, and your foiling's coming around nice and easy, I'm going to do a big section here so I can just show you this. And you've got a position where somebody's who's highlighted it before is not very good, and you need to correct their foiling. you can come through, do your weaves. So pick up your pieces that you want to pick up. You will also have in there some pieces that you don't want, okay? But we've got them now, or that you, not that you don't want, pieces that you want but haven't been coloured because they haven't been coloured from before, and you're not just doing your root anymore. So where we would go from there is paste as you normally would up on the root. So you're going to have a situation where you've got colour coming in, so bleach coming in or lightener coming down, and you want to colour just the roots on the bit where the lightener is, but the mid-lengths and ends on some other pieces, okay? So it will spread, but you want to try and get your overlap as little as possible, and then just run your foil or run the point of your brush down and find your pieces that you want to blend, okay? You can also do something like a root shadow-ish sort of thing, and then what you want to also do is make sure you flick these pieces of hair out to the side of the foil, okay? You can also do like a root shadow-ish kind of thing, which I think works quite nicely, or something that you could call like a reverse balayage, for instance, which would be where we blend that foil out or blend that piece of lightener out. Now that only really works too well if you've got somebody where you're only going for like 3 levels of lift and lower. So if we do that again, so just plunge some weaves in and then pop my foil up, you don't always have to go all the way through to the very end. I find this has saved my life so many times just by working a little bit more of almost a reverse balayage in the foil. So again, paste nicely and then keep your position in, but then they've all got this brown hair down here. We'll have a 1 or 2 foils in there, if depending on how bad the foil work is. And we can just sort of almost reverse balayage. So just very gently come through and give that softness. So you're getting thicker in the top and then very, very fine as we come down into here, just so that it starts to blend that shape off. What we don't want is what we see there, where we've got that little line. So you can see that solid line that's created, where it's almost like I've just gone bing like that and not done any more. So we want to be very gentle with the application, just to slightly blend that line down, okay, and create a little bit more of a sort of softness to the blend. The blend is the most important thing. We're going to do balayage demo next week, and then again take the ends out or flick the ends out, because you don't want those lifting up and sitting onto the colour. And my fold there is dreadful. We're going to do a balayage demo next week, because why not? It's the last week. We may as well finish on something that everyone wants to do. But you'll see on the balayage demo that I work everything zigzaggy. So as Amy was saying earlier, the zigzag sections are excellent for balayage. And we work in things called W's and V's. I don't know, I said things called W's and V's. You all know what a W and V is. We work on W's and V's so that you've got your point of interest, you've got your point of flick and your point of blend. Yeah. So then when you come on to doing your application, it's all in the wrist. So it's all in the flick. So you want to flick from the mid length up and then just saturate the hair. You can use a balayage board if you want to. If you don't fancy using a balayage board, use the back of your hand, works very, very well. However, people see, a lot of the time people see, or people do, the back combing balayage techniques. And the back combing balayage is just to give you a sort of epic blend, really, and give you a much, much cleaner blend to the hair. Personally, I don't like to back comb too much, because I find it can be a little bit hit and miss with the overall look and the overall shape. But when you are back combing your balayage, it does look good. But by using V's and W's and a little bit more controlled technique, you can get away without having to back comb. Okay, so there's a few balayage techniques as well. Next week we'll go through one of them, because it is a level 3 technique and something we only focus on level 3. We won't do 4 or 5 different techniques, but we will do a few, because obviously you guys are going to want to start earning money. You're going to have people wanting their hair done, especially after lockdown or the April the 12th. We're going to have your mates and your family are going to want to have their hair done. Somebody may want a balayage, and balayage is easy. All right. You think foil work is difficult? I think, believe me, now we've got some balayage to do. How did you find your root tints? You found those quite good or quite easy to do. Just keeping control of your shape. So balayage is exactly the same as a root tint in terms of difficulty. You just need to stick with the rules. So we're going to go over those next week. Okay, so last little section, if I just fire one more in here, and we won't do any more on this little piece. So last little bit.
Rob, can I ask a question?
Yep.
You see, if someone has a side parting, how would you change the front 2 sections, or would you keep it the same?
Good question. Very good question. Give me 2 seconds and I will answer. So with a side parting, they only wear in that position. So they don't flip their parting.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So very nice question. I would basically just twist around my diagonal boxes. So there we go, that'll do. So if her parting was in here, I would just move the boxes round. Okay, so I would then have one across the top and then one working round, but everything I do is diagonal, because you just run with the shape of the head. But yeah, very nice question, but I'd literally just shift the box round. So I'd come up to that point and then work myself diagonal across that, up to that parting point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So imagine she's facing straight, okay, and that's her, imagine she's facing straight now, and that's her side part in there. I would shift the boxes round and then just work diagonal from the front off those boxes. So I wouldn't work up to that parting, I'd work mine diagonally. That's just how I do it. If you wanted somebody who doesn't ever move their parting, then by all means, just work a box up to the top. So you don't have to do it diagonally if you don't want to. You can just have a complete vertical box, work your front pieces on the slant like we did, and then just work everything up. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good. So there's my foils in here. They're quite neat and tidy, which is good. They're quite close as well. So I'm quite happy with the way they sit. Now I would work, just to show you what I mean by that back box here, that if I started in that side piece, I'm then going to find it quite difficult to foil my way up here. So always start on your lowest pieces in the back and work your way through. But for the purposes of the video.
Sorry to interrupt, but that would be the same for fringe as well.
Say that again. What do you mean?
Sorry to interrupt, but you know what the question you just answered with the side parting, would that be the same for fringe, or would you just work?
Nice. So a fringe, like we did 2 weeks ago, I would just work a little triangle and then work myself round on that. So just work your sections across the front. So I'd have a little triangle where my fringe is, and then have my diagonal boxes coming back, but just work in a sort of rounded shape coming back off the fringe. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. So that's that's the technique that I use primarily. Now, for instance, if we wanted to, I'm not going to do that for now. I'm going to keep that in, because say we wanted to run this down to a full head, okay? And she's got nice long hair and we wanted a full head. So in here, we change this section for here and run that down into a vertical box away. So we can point this down here into the corner. We wouldn't do a full head on a graduate bob for obvious reasons that we explained earlier, but we could control 3 boxes around the base here, okay? So still coming down off of our point. Try and pin that in somehow. So we'd have 3 boxes like that, yeah? So a quick way to work this is actually doing it on the slant. So say, for instance, this is the box we're tackling and we're working first of all. You can work this all vertically from the very, very bottom. So as we did before with our half heads and full heads, where we just had 3 columns running down, but that takes forever, okay? So a really, really quick technique that we can use here is, probably even if we stretch that out a little bit and try and make it into 2, is get a nice big section down here. Now that probably shouldn't be showing you this, but I'm going to. And then you'll have a tiny little piece in here that we can work up a number of small little weaves if we want to. Okay, but a real quick time saver is starting in the base here. Now this is difficult for your guests, so you're gonna have to push your guest's head forwards quite nicely and off to the side while you're putting the first few in. But we start down here in the base, okay, and whop a foil in there. So you're gonna need quite wide foils here, but we can get away with that with our ones. So again, can you see this? Yeah, good. So again, we can either slice or weave or baby light. So I'm gonna run a few weaves. Okay. Yep.
I've watched a few videos where it says you should do like a couple of baby lights at the hairline.
Yeah.
And then get the weave thicker to make it look more natural.
Yeah, good.
Right?
Absolutely. So I always start with baby lights in the hairline wherever I am around the head. Generally because, like you say, it's more natural and gives you that more natural feel. No one really wants slices around the sides or around their hairline, because a slice just gives you a little bit too much color almost. So always start with a baby light and then work into your weaves or your slices from there, definitely. So section 1 goes in. Always around the hairline, it's quite tough too, okay? And then we want to start diagonaling ourselves out. So come a little bit higher around the base. So we're going to work ourselves around into being a little bit more of a diagonal section or a little bit more of a vertical section. And we cover more of a surface area, but it gives you a much more natural way and a natural flow. If you have a look at the Wella Home application that I sent to you guys last week, the similar thing is on there for this technique here. They do a different way in the top, but they work their shape around the base and they work a sort of curved section out of your back hairline to speed your work up. And you can still call it full head because you've got foils in the full head or in the whole head, but you're just working yourself more of a curvature out of the base hairline so that you can create a little bit more of a density and a diversity in the back. Okay, so section number 3, we can, obviously my section's a bit untidy here, so I do apologize for that, but we start to slow up and start to come less diagonal as we're coming through. Hopefully you can see that with my untidy sections.
Oh, Rob, also, you know that Wella thing that you gave us? I meant to say thank you so much because it helped my color understanding a little bit better with the product as well.
What did you learn different from it? Or
So basically, you know where you were telling us about like the quasi and the permanent colors and stuff, they have this new foam color that they use to like touch up. Okay. And basically when you have highlights and stuff, it keeps that natural look, just make it pop a little bit more when it like wear out. Yes, and I find, wow, I didn't even know that. So it kind of and then as they were explaining it, and then new lines of color, because they have like bleaching, scalp bleaching, off scalp bleaching and all of that. So it makes it a little bit more, do I make sense? Because where you were explaining it and we could understand it, because we couldn't see the color, I was getting a bit puzzled. But now they show you the brand, I can, because when I was thinking about quasi, you know, I was thinking about like the, you know, the Adore colors, like, but then they show you more what it is and everything. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. No, it's really good. Thanks, Yolette. That's the problem that I've really found by doing this at home is that you can't see the colors. So I'm talking to you about a base 6, a base 7, a base 8, etc. And you can't see the color. So I can't really ask you guys, oh, what do you think my hair looks like? Is mine a base 6 or a 7? Because you're not going to have seen it before. So that's, like you were saying, that's where the application comes in really handy, is that they've actually got the colors processing for you there. When we go back into salon, we're going to be working with color. Okay, realistically, I don't want to focus too much more time on using baby powder and conditioner because it's ridiculous. But yeah, good. Thanks, Yule. So you can see there, I'm coming round the head, and I basically work that up to here. Do the same this side, so work all the way up to my my point, and then in the back we can just do a few slices or a few weaves in that back section. So it's much quicker than working your way up completely. Okay. Then if you want to control it, just lay it down and just tuck it so that it doesn't ping out too much. Okay. So thirdly, we can do a zigzaggy form. Now, Amy said about this earlier on, and it is a smashing way to highlight. The only reason I stay away from it, as I said earlier on, it's just a personal thing on mine. I don't like taking forever putting my sections in, and I always put my sections in, other than that last piece. So you haven't got to put your sections in if you don't want to, but I find it makes it 100 times easier for me. So the personal way that I would zigzag away is just take a piece in the front into here, and then pin that up slightly while I just roughly section this away. I've missed a bit in there. Has anyone else seen any other techniques that they like, or online, for instance? Maybe. So section there, and then run another section from the side into here. So come across the center point of the head. Really important we come across the center point of the head, because otherwise there's no point doing a zigzag section. Okay, so work that in. So if I clip that one out the way here, so we can actually see it. And then again, lift up from across the, down. So come across the point from here and across to the opposite side. So this gives us fundamental flickiness on the top of the head. As Amy said, her client that she was working on or working with liked to move her hair around all over the place. So just to sort of untidy up the top a little bit more, mess up the top a little bit more, not mess it up, that's the wrong word, jazz up the top a little bit more, working with zigzaggy form can work incredibly well. Okay, so it just gives you that difference in your foil application. The only reason there's differences in foil application and the way you can do something slightly different is to make yourself better than the other people who are just using the vertical sections. I haven't got any more clips. Yeah, so if you're working with somebody who's just working vertically, and then their client comes to you and says, oh, I want to change to my foils, you can say, well, I'm going to do something, I'm going to work with directional sections, I'm going to work diagonally across your head because your head is round. And then we can completely control the way the hair regrows. And if you flick your hair from left to right, we can control the way that works. Yeah, so nice little techniques to basically change things. So we've got a nice zigzag going up. She can well wear her part in wherever she wants to wear it. She can ping it over there or ping it over there, and it still works really nicely. An application process that I would use for this is just primarily the same as what we did before. So what's happened there? It's primarily the same as what we did before. So just work my baby lights in the front and then come to this side. And again, as Emily's saying, work another little set of baby lights in through here. And then as we come back, we can start to weave the hair through. Okay. So
is there a side parting, Rob?
For any parting, really. So if you've got a side parting, it works very well. But if you don't have a parting, if that makes sense. So if you want to wear it wherever you want to go, so sometimes she wears it there, sometimes she wears it over there. A diagonal section one works incredibly well for that. I'd probably say back to what Hannah was saying earlier with the partings. Generally, if they don't ever move their partings, so if I have fours and I only ever wear mine there because the other side is just, I'm not even going to tell you. But I would just work my foils up to there and work these foils all the way over there because it's just easier, it's quicker, you're going to shoot it through. But if you want to have that diversity that most people want, where they can change it sometimes, or they get blown around in the wind and they want to have that little bit of difference in their hair. Or sometimes when you get your fringe comes down, your parting comes there, but then the other side of your hair goes there, you still want that compatibility and that combination of your coloring. Okay, so I'm going to shut the shutters and do head sheet. So head sheet wise on this side, where's the front? Here's the top. So we've got first section coming across here, then second one coming across the point of the head. Okay, so say we're only working up there because we've got our second box coming in from the side. Say you got your center of the head here. I would always say cross across the top of the, can you see that? I can't even see that with that light on, can you? Oh, for God's sake. Yeah. So you got your center of the head, and then always come across the center of the head with your diagonals, okay? Because it's just going to create that little bit more of a diagonal approach to the head. And then when we come away, we just want to foil, sorry about this, and then we just want to foil from the front, little baby lights running in. And then each time you're coming against the way the hair falls, yeah, or you're coming against the previous foil. So it gives you a much more sort of zhuzhy technique and a head flowing technique. Then from down here, again, we're running up on the sides, aren't we? Because we're coming diagonal away from the front of the head. So your diagonal section in the front there is coming here, then coming there, then coming there. But this point here, we're still looking to come direct out from the head, okay? Now, the only difference from this box here that comes all the way up into the side, remember when we were doing the vertical section and we still done those slightly diagonal sections in the front, if you remember, because when she puts her hair back, that's what's gonna soften your hair down. That's what's gonna create that really nice flow and that nice lift and push. So all we're doing is just continuing that flow back all the way into the head because it makes sense. Otherwise, like Urelette said at the very, I think it was Urelette at the start, where she was finding it slightly difficult to do the sides because she had those front ones in. I'm the same. I can't stand that. I hate doing 2 diagonal ones, 3 diagonal ones, and then coming vertical. I can't get my comb in there, can't get my hands in there. It's too difficult. So I find just going all the way back diagonally works better, but also you find it easier. Yeah. So, and then in here, these were coming across, that was coming down, that's coming across, etc. Okay. In the back, what we were talking about in the back was we've got our little diamond here, or it can be a box. It doesn't have to be a diamond. It can be a little square box, whatever you want to do. It's completely up to you. I use a diamond because I just find it easier. Okay. Then we had, that's not low enough. If we lower that down a little bit more, then we had our little box in there, didn't we? Coming for our half head, yeah? So instead of working everything vertically down, we basically did sections like that. So little triangles, okay? And then worked my diagonal line pivoting from the section just above the ear, okay? So that worked my shaping. I don't know if you can see, why don't I pull that forward? So working myself pivoting from the top of the ear, okay, and then very slowly just pivoting that section round until we reach that top point, okay, and then in here we can just work this nice and quickly vertically, and then you'll run out of hair by the time you get halfway up it, and then in here just continue that line up, okay. And then do whatever you want with this top box. So with the pivot in the back, you can pivot it or you can work it vertically. You can do whatever you want to do with that top piece. Okay, that's completely up to you. But foiling is like hair cutting, in a sense of foiling is like hairdressing. In a overall perspective, it is all in the eye of what you want to do. It's in the eye of the beholder. Beauty in hair is about what you like. It doesn't matter what somebody else likes. If you find something good and the way you work it sits nicely, work with it. If you're comfortable with your body, work with it. Yeah, I find this side here so easy to do, and all the way round I'm just working parallel and diagonal from the front. I find that easy and it's quick. I'm fast at it, so I know full well that when I get my foils out, chances are I shouldn't have to bleed, but you can never really combat that too much. But I know just by looking at it that I've got a really clean application. And that took a bit of time because I was on video, but if I fire those in, it doesn't take too long. Then you come across the top, round the back, everything works perfectly, okay? Do focus on your placements in terms of your haircuts. So graduated bobs don't come too low. Round grads, short grads, flat grads, anything like that don't come too low on the sides because it will look all dotty. If you want to sort of combat that straight away, start with just your herringbone. So do a herringbone, a little T-section. You're not going anywhere near that back piece. Paige, you're off mute. Do you have a question?
No, I just didn't realise I was.
You're off mute. Don't worry.
Did I say anything? Said a good job. I didn't make a noise or anything like that. I wouldn't even notice.
Really good. Are there any questions? Anyone got anything they want to ask about that? No. Okay. If you want to do your diagonal or your zigzag section, try it. It's good to try. And I just find it takes a while getting my sections in, is why I don't normally use it. It is a very handy technique because you can flip your part in anywhere from your recession to your recession. So that works quite well. Anything that we've covered today is primarily just ideas. Okay, they're not, I wouldn't say they're correct. If you go to somewhere else and they say, this is how we do it, that's how they do it. Certain companies have their own ways. Amy, I'm sure headmasters, they would have foiled slightly differently. They foiled hair from different angles of the head, and they foil in the front first or they foil in the back first. I have no idea, but they will have differences in technique. Hannah, where you work now, they've probably got differences in where they start and where they end. You can also, as stylists, hair cutters and colorists, you can find your way to work. In a cutting perspective, I start my short grads from the front, but the LHAA tells you to start in the back. Doesn't make sense starting in the back for me, but that's because I think too much about hair. Find your comfort, start there. Find the way you want to work it and work it. But as long as you explain it to your guest that that's what you're doing, they're going to know what you're doing. Don't just do these diagonal sections and working with your diagonal bit in the top and your crisscross sections and don't tell them. Make sure you tell them. All right. That'll do it. I'm going to stop the video. Are there any questions? Are you sure?